Picture this. A beautiful summer afternoon in an upscale neighborhood in Atlanta. Michael Carter, a former police officer with 15 years of service, is finally living his dream. After years of saving every penny and working overtime shifts, he managed to buy his dream house, a stunning two-story home with a crystal-clear swimming pool that sparkles under the Georgia sun. But his moment of peace is about to be shattered. As Michael reclines in his lounge chair, eyes closed and enjoying the warm breeze, police sirens pierce the tranquility. 2 patrol cars screech to a halt in front of his house. The officers, hands on their holsters, approach his fence. "Sir, we've received a report of a suspicious individual trespassing in this pool area." Michael sits up, a familiar knot forming in his stomach. He knows exactly who made that call. Through the corner of his eye, he catches a glimpse of his neighbor, Karen Thompson, peeking through her curtains with a smug smile on her face. This isn't the first time she's pulled something like this, and little does she know, it's about to be her last. Let me take you back to where it all began, 2 months earlier. 2 months earlier, Michael was proudly moving into his new home. After a decade and a half of protecting and serving, he'd finally achieved what his parents could only dream of, owning a house in one of Atlanta's most prestigious neighborhoods. The previous owners had maintained the property beautifully, especially the backyard pool that had caught Michael's eye from day one. He was arranging his patio furniture when he first noticed her. Karen Thompson, standing in her second-floor window, phone pressed against her ear, staring intently at him. Michael waved politely, but she quickly disappeared behind her curtains. The next day, while Michael was at the hardware store, his security camera pinged. There she was, walking through his unlocked back gate like she owned the place, wearing a designer swimsuit and carrying a luxury beach towel. She casually laid her things on his pool chair and dipped her feet in his pool. When Michael returned and confronted her, Karen's reaction was unforgettable. "Oh," she said, feigning surprise with a hand to her chest. "I thought you were the new pool maintenance man. The previous owners always let me use their pool." Her condescending smile made his blood boil, but years of police training had taught him to stay calm. "Ma'am, I'm not the maintenance man. I'm the new owner," Michael replied professionally. "And I'd appreciate it if you'd ask permission before entering my property." Karen's face twisted into an expression of disbelief. "You? The owner?" She laughed nervously. "There must be some mistake. I know the realtor handling this property, and she never mentioned— Well," she gestured vaguely at him, leaving the racist implication hanging in the air. "There's no mistake, Mrs. Thompson. This is my home, and you're trespassing. Please leave." Michael's voice remained steady, but inside he was counting to 10. As Karen gathered her things, she muttered under her breath, "We'll see about that." It wasn't a threat. It was a promise. Over the next few weeks, Karen's behavior went from annoying to outrageous. One Saturday morning, Michael woke up to voices and splashing. Looking through his window, he couldn't believe his eyes. Karen had brought 4 of her friends for a pool party in his backyard. "Ladies, you need to leave immediately," Michael announced, stepping onto his patio. "This is private property." "Oh, don't be difficult," Karen waved dismissively. "We're just having a little fun. Besides, this pool barely gets any use." Her friends looked uncomfortable, shifting in their designer swimsuits. "Karen told us she had permission," one woman whispered, quickly gathering her things. Michael maintained his composure, remembering his de-escalation training. "Mrs. Thompson, this is your final warning. The next time you trespass, I'm calling the police." "Go ahead," Karen sneered, being the last to leave. "I know everyone at the precinct. My husband plays golf with Captain Richards." That afternoon, Michael installed security cameras. He'd learned from his years on the force. Document everything. Within days, the cameras caught Karen testing his gate, peering through his windows, and even attempting to use her own key, copy from the previous owners. The final straw came when she hosted her book club. Michael returned from grocery shopping to find 8 women in his backyard, drinking wine and lounging by his pool. This time, he did call the police. Officers Davis and Martinez arrived, his former colleagues. "Mike, long time no see," Officer Davis started, then noticed the situation. "Oh, it's this kind of call." Karen immediately switched to tears. "Officers, I'm so glad you're here. This man is harassing us. We've always had pool privileges with the previous owners, and he's being completely unreasonable." "Ma'am," Officer Martinez interrupted. "Mr. Carter was one of our best officers. If he says you're trespassing, you're trespassing. Please leave before we have to make this official." As the women hurried out, Karen's face turned red with humiliation. "This isn't over," she hissed. "You don't belong here, and I'll make sure everyone knows it." Karen's campaign against Michael took a darker turn. Suddenly, mysterious concerned neighbors were posting on the community Facebook page about suspicious activities at his address. His morning newspaper started disappearing. Anonymous complaints about his unkempt yard flooded the HOA, despite his lawn being perfectly maintained. But Michael hadn't spent 15 years in law enforcement without learning a thing or two about gathering evidence. His cameras caught Karen stealing his newspaper at 6 a.m., photographing his house at odd hours, and even sprinkling plant killer on his prized roses under cover of darkness. During the monthly HOA meeting, Karen played her biggest card yet. "I'm concerned about property values," she announced to the room, shooting Michael a side glance. "Some recent changes in the neighborhood have made my potential buyers uncomfortable." Michael calmly stood up, phone in hand. "Interesting you should mention property values, Mrs. Thompson. Would you like to explain this footage of you vandalizing my garden last Tuesday at 11:47 p.m.? The room fell silent as he played the crystal-clear video. Karen's face turned pale, but she quickly recovered. "I was checking for suspicious activity. Someone's been damaging properties in the neighborhood." "Yes," Michael replied coolly. "And now we all know who that someone is." That evening, Michael discovered his pool water had been tampered with, filled with dish soap that would take days to filter out. As he watched the bubbles float across his once pristine pool, a plan began forming in his mind. If Karen wanted to play games with his pool, maybe it was time to give her exactly what she wanted. With a little twist, he remembered a conversation with his old partner about a case involving a non-toxic, temporary dye used in pool maintenance. The kind that only activates when it comes in contact with certain chemicals found in cosmetics and sunscreen. The kind that would take several days to fade from skin. For the first time since this nightmare began, Michael smiled. Sometimes, the best way to handle a bully isn't to fight fire with fire. It's to fight fire with a perfectly legal, completely harmless, but absolutely unforgettable lesson in karma. Michael did his research carefully. The dye he ordered was completely safe, used by professional pool maintenance companies to detect leaks. The best part? It only reacted with specific chemicals found in expensive sunscreens and cosmetics. Exactly the kind Karen and her friends slathered on before their unauthorized swims. He tested it first in a small bucket with some of Karen's favorite brand of sunscreen, which he'd noticed left behind on his pool chairs. The result was perfect. A bright, unmistakable green that would take at least a week to fade naturally. Not harmful, not permanent, just incredibly embarrassing. The timing couldn't have been better. Through the neighborhood grapevine, Michael learned that Karen was planning another unauthorized pool party that weekend. A small gathering to support local real estate values, she'd told everyone. Code for, let's make the new neighbor uncomfortable. Michael prepared meticulously. He installed 3 additional hidden cameras at different angles, making sure to capture every possible view of the pool. He added the dye to the pool using the exact concentration recommended by the manufacturer. To anyone looking, the water appeared completely normal, crystal clear and inviting. That evening, he noticed Karen on her phone in her backyard, gesturing animatedly toward his house. "Yes, he's usually gone all day on Saturdays," she said loudly enough for him to hear. "Trust me, it'll be fine. Bring your best swimsuit." Michael smiled to himself as he packed his car the next morning, making sure Karen saw him leave. But instead of driving away, he parked around the corner and walked back through the side gate to his home office, which had a perfect view of the pool. The security app on his phone pinged. Right on schedule, Karen was testing his back gate. This time, though, Michael didn't feel angry. He just settled into his chair, phone ready to record, and waited for karma to do its work. At precisely 2 p.m., Karen made her grand entrance. She sashayed through Michael's gate like she owned the place, followed by 6 of her friends, all carrying expensive beach bags and wearing designer swimsuits. They set up their little party with practiced efficiency, champagne bottles, fancy snacks, and Bluetooth speakers playing soft jazz. "Ladies, welcome to our Saturday sanctuary," Karen announced, raising her glass. "What the new owner doesn't know won't hurt him." The women giggled nervously, but the promise of a private pool party on a hot Atlanta afternoon quickly overcame their hesitation. One by one, they slathered on their expensive sunscreen, the exact brands Michael had tested. Karen was the first to dive in, making an elegant splash. "The water's perfect," she called out. Her friends followed, and soon they were all swimming, completely unaware of the chemical reaction slowly beginning to take effect. It started with Karen's friend, Susan. Karen, is your skin looking different?" The woman was staring at her arm in horror. Under the bright afternoon sun, a distinct green tint was spreading across her skin. Karen looked down at her own hands and let out a shriek that could have woken the dead. "What's happening?" Her normally pale skin was turning a bright, unmistakable shade of green, like a chameleon caught in a St. Patrick's Day parade. Panic erupted. Women scrambled out of the pool, screaming and grabbing their things. Their expensive makeup was now streaking green down their faces, their carefully manicured hands looking like they'd been dipped in food coloring. "My daughter's wedding is next week," one woman wailed, examining her now green legs. "I'm supposed to be in photos." Karen stood there, dripping and green, her face contorted in rage. This was deliberate," she sputtered, looking around wildly. That's when she spotted one of the cameras, its small red light blinking cheerfully. The exodus that followed would have made an Olympic sprinter proud. 6 green-tinted women running through the neighborhood in their designer swimsuits, leaving trails of wet footprints on the sidewalk. The video hit social media like a green tidal wave. Michael had edited it perfectly, starting with clips of Karen's previous trespassing incidents, followed by the pool party disaster, all set to the same jazz music they'd been playing. Within hours, it had millions of views across multiple platforms. Local news stations picked up the story. "Trespassing, Karen Gets Green with Envy" became the trending headline. Security footage showed Karen's repeated intrusions, her vandalism attempts, and finally, her emerald transformation. The comment sections exploded with people sharing their own Karen stories, making the video spread even faster. Karen's real estate agency couldn't ignore the viral disaster. Their Facebook page was flooded with green emoji comments. Potential clients were asking if they could trust an agent who trespassed on private property. By Monday morning, they'd released a statement. "We pride ourselves on respect for property rights. The actions shown in the video do not reflect our company's values." The neighborhood WhatsApp group buzzed with activity. Residents who'd stayed quiet during Karen's campaign against Michael suddenly found their voices. "She did the same thing to the Johnsons last year. Remember when she called the police on those kids' lemonade stand?" The dam of silence had broken. But the most satisfying moment came when Karen, still sporting a distinct mint hue, attempted damage control. She posted a video explaining her side, but her green-tinged appearance only made it go viral for all the wrong reasons. "I was just trying to maintain community standards," she insisted, her green face glowing under the camera lights, making her look like a frustrated wicked witch of the West. Michael didn't say a word. He didn't have to. He just enjoyed his pool, waving cheerfully whenever he spotted a green-tinted figure peeking through neighboring curtains. Karen's attempts to salvage her reputation only dug her deeper into a green-tinted hole. Her lawyer sent Michael a cease and desist letter, demanding he remove the video. Michael's response was simple: a compilation of her trespassing incidents, complete with timestamps and documented police reports. "You can't prove that pool dye was meant for us specifically," Karen's lawyer argued in a follow-up email. Michael's security footage showing her stealing his newspaper and vandalizing his garden quickly ended that discussion. The neighborhood dynamic shifted dramatically. People who had once avoided eye contact with Michael now stopped to chat. Mrs. Rodriguez from across the street brought over her famous empanadas. "I should have spoken up sooner," she admitted. Karen reported my Christmas decorations to the HOA last year because they were too ethnic. The Johnson family next door finally shared their story about Karen trying to get their children's basketball hoop removed, claiming it decreased property values. Even Karen's closest friends started distancing themselves, especially since some of them were still sporting a faint green tinge. Karen's final attempt at revenge backfired spectacularly. She tried to organize a neighborhood meeting to discuss dangerous chemical usage in pools, but only 3 people showed up, all of them wearing green ribbons in silent support of Michael. The cherry on top came when Karen's husband was overheard at the local golf club. "Do you know how hard it is to close a real estate deal when your wife is literally green?" he complained to his friends. "She can't even show houses right now. People keep asking if she's feeling well," Michael maintained, his professional demeanor throughout it all. When reporters asked for comments, he simply said, "Everyone is welcome to use my pool. They just need to ask permission first." His small smile spoke volumes. 2 weeks later, a "for sale" sign appeared in front of Karen's house. The remaining green tint had finally faded from her skin, but her reputation was permanently stained. She started taking the long way around the block to avoid passing Michael's house, especially during his weekend pool parties. These gatherings had become a neighborhood highlight. Michael hosted them properly, with written invitations, safety rules, and his famous grilled ribs. Children splashed happily while parents chatted, creating the kind of community Karen had claimed to protect but actually destroyed. "You know," said Tom from 2 doors down, "I've lived here for 20 years, and this is the first time I've really known my neighbors." He was helping Michael set up for a Labor Day barbecue, the pool sparkling innocently in the background. The Rodriguez kids started a running joke, tiptoeing exaggeratedly past Karen's house while wearing swim gear, calling out in stage whispers, "Don't tell Karen." Even their parents couldn't help but laugh. Real estate agents showing Karen's house had to explain to potential buyers why the current owner was selling. The story had become such local legend that they were legally obligated to disclose it. "No, the pool incident won't affect your property," they'd assure concerned buyers. The green dye was completely temporary. Karen made one final appearance at an HOA meeting before moving out. She'd prepared a speech about neighborhood decline, but when she stood up, someone in the back simply started humming, "It's not easy being green." The room erupted in poorly concealed laughter, and Karen fled. Her face flushed a shade of red that clashed magnificently with her fading green undertones. The day Karen's moving truck pulled away, Michael raised a glass of lemonade in his backyard. Not in celebration of her departure, but in appreciation of how standing up to a bully had brought his community together. 1 year later, Michael's pool remains the heart of the neighborhood. The new family that bought Karen's house, an interracial couple with twin daughters, fits perfectly into the community. Their girls are on the swim team, and Michael helps them practice on weekends. Sometimes visitors ask about the small, framed photo near his pool gate. It shows a group of people running through the neighborhood, their skin an unmistakable shade of green. Michael just smiles and says, "That's a reminder that karma has a way of making a splash." The security cameras are still there, but these days they capture different scenes: birthday parties, swimming lessons, and neighbors sharing summer evenings. The HOA meetings are shorter, friendlier, and remarkably free of complaints about property values. Last week, Michael received an interesting email. A local news station had discovered that Karen, now living in another state, was making waves in her new neighborhood, something about demanding access to someone else's tennis court. He chuckled, marked the email as read, and headed outside to enjoy his pool. As he floated peacefully in the crystal-clear water, Michael reflected on how sometimes the best revenge isn't about getting even. It's about showing others how to stand up for themselves. His pool had become more than just a luxury. It was a symbol of standing your ground with dignity and grace. If you've ever dealt with a Karen in your life, remember, sometimes the best way to handle entitled behavior is to let karma do its thing. Just make sure you have good security, cameras, and maybe keep some pool dye handy. Drop a comment if you think Karen got exactly what she deserved, and share your own story of standing up to entitled behavior. Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more stories of sweet, satisfying karma.